Yo, what's up? This Coach Reed. Today is the 100th birthday of Brother Malcolm X, El Haj Malik El Shabazz. Um, being that's my namesake. I wear the name proudly. So I feel like I want to honor him, and the way I choose to do so on my page here is to share with everyone who's willing to listen and look and even click on the link in the description when it's all said and done. But I'm gonna share with you guys my first lesson that I ever taught, my first slideshow that I ever made for class, and yeah, it's called "Who Was Malcolm X." I figured, you know, it would only be right that how I really start this thing off, other than borrowing slideshows from other teachers and kind of when I was learning how to be a teacher. This is one of the lessons that I really took a while to figure out how I would do it. So I got to thinking about Brother Malcolm. Uh, I just thought about how a lot of people have misconceptions about who he was, who he is, his legacy, and everything. So I kind of wanted to just take a deep dive, not too deep, really. I kind of want to, always kind of say I'm about inspiring others to do their own research for sure. But as far as where this starts, um, who was Malcolm X? Who do people think he is, and who he really was? Is kind of how I framed it back in 2015 in my first full year as a teacher. So let's go. All right. So who was Malcolm X? I'm gonna move this PIP over here. This is one of his most famous pictures, but this slide kind of just says what when I ask people, you ask a typical person who they think Malcolm X is. These are the responses that I tend to hear the most. So the phrase "by any means necessary," what does that mean? What did he mean by that? That's his most famous phrase. I read the biography when I was a kid by that title, and it just means freedom, liberty, justice, and doing whatever it takes to get it. And if that takes someone to defend themselves from attacks, then by any means it should happen. He was a member of the Nation of Islam. People understand what that is. Elijah Muhammad being the leader of the Nation of Islam that Malcolm was a spokesperson for. He was a civil rights activist, so he always gets lumped in that group with Martin Luther King and as well as others. Obviously, him and Martin Luther King were, I guess, people focus on the differences between them. He was a supporter of violence. That's what people always say. MLK was nonviolent. Malcolm X is violent. He was a criminal, so they bring up his background, his past, and a racist, a black supremacist that because of the rhetoric of the Nation of Islam that he spoke on behalf of, they said that all white people were the devil at one point. So they used that to frame who he was as well. Now, when I think of Malcolm X, these are the things that I think of, not just a civil rights activist, but a human rights activist who wanted to take America to trial for violating the human rights of black people. A black nationalism was his platform. Um, it's kind of a way of saying that all black people are one and should work together to build a quote unquote nation within a nation. Um, Towards the end of his life, after he split with the Nation of Islam, he converted to Sunni Islam, so he became a Sunni Muslim. He was a husband of Dr. Betty Shabazz and a father of his six daughters. We'll talk about those beautiful women a little later. As you can see, he's pictured here with three of them and the great Muhammad Ali. But that part kind of gets lost in a lot of what people say about Malcolm X. An eloquent speaker, probably the greatest speaker. of the 20th century. You put anyone else in front of a microphone, not challenged, I would put my money on Brother Malcolm every time. And a self-educated man who, never graduated high school, never graduated college. He joked about getting his bachelor's degree in prison, where he did just a ton of reading. But he did have a strong educational background and foundation built by his parents. Speaking of those people, so as I break this slideshow down and slide this picture and picture all around a little bit, um, I kind of want to just walk through the steps and the evolution of who Malcolm X was, because he wasn't just one person. He was multiple people throughout his life, a very short life of 39 years. But Malcolm Little is where it all began in 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. Found these images of him, many trials in his upbringing, um, his parents, Earl and Louise, um, his sister, Ella, who lived in Boston, who, after Earl was murdered and Louise was institutionalized, they end up in, he ends up in different foster homes, him and his other siblings, and ultimately ends up going to live with Ella. And yeah, so his parents did build that foundation for him. His family was very close in Nebraska before moving to Michigan, but they did have some struggles. So his father was killed under very suspicious circumstances. All right. So he goes from uh, Malcolm Little to Detroit Red. These are some images of some interesting, some interesting choice of words of a young me 10 years ago who made this slideshow. But these are, based off the autobiography and pretty much any other book you might read about Brother Malcolm, or anything he might say about himself. These were the things that he would identify himself as from the age of 14 through 21, where he finally ended up going to prison. But he was a hustler, drug addict, addicted to weed, cocaine. Um, he participated in, pimping and the number game, and was a thief and a burglar, drug dealer, a womanizer, and a draft dodger. And interesting fact, Chicago Red, right here, aka Red Fox, the comedian who created the TV show Sanford and Son, was one of his running buddies. There's a picture of him in his Lindy suit at the age of 15. It's funny when you watch the movie with Denzel Washington playing a much younger Malcolm X. People really thought he was an older man in his younger days, so he was able to move around with adults in Harlem. Hopefully, this inspires someone to go read the autobiography, because the Harlemite chapter is probably one of my favorites. Just because you really get to see how how the story of the many young people get caught up in that street life and that type of lifestyle because of the traumas that they go through as a child, and then just circumstances and coincidences that lead them into running into the people that can connect them even deeper into this. So, in Malcolm X's story in Harlem, man, it's they could have just made a movie just about that part alone. All right, so in 1946, he starts his printed prison sentence, and he gets the nickname of Satan. I know that's crazy, right? But yeah, sacrilegious attitude, addicted to drugs, still getting high, buying marijuana and pills from the guards. What type of place prison is. So, but also during his time in prison is when his brother does introduce him to the Nation of Islam. So as you can see the pictures on the right, you can see he still has the long hair. That one with the hat on is just like his earliest mugshot. But this picture to the left, the mugshot and profile to the left, It's after he is converted to Islam. He's cuts his hair off and he's gotten rid of that conch. And yeah, he starts to change his life. He starts writing letters to the president. He's no longer eating pork. He's reading profusely. He is writing all the words of the dictionary, and he is really starting to prepare himself to um, connect with Elijah Muhammad when he is released from prison. So he goes from Satan to Brother Malcolm. And during that time period, he's introduced to Nation Islam along with his brother. His sister Ella joins as well. Like they are supporters of Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation Islam. So he becomes a full-fledged member. All right. Upon his release, it's shortly after this time that he becomes the brother minister Malcolm X of the Temple Number 7 in Harlem, New York. Like that's a pretty big deal. He was just so serious about it, and he was a very devout leader. He helps to convert Cassius Clay, who becomes Muhammad Ali. He is all over the news and the media, speaking all over the country on behalf of the Nation Islam and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Pretty much every sentence in every speech, he starts off with, "The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that." So he's not really speaking for himself outside of the fact that he wholeheartedly believes in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and is just a devout member who, um, yeah, is just very committed to the cause because he sees his true purpose in the way it's helping Black people, mostly himself. Like pretty much everything that he bases his love and devotion for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the nation itself is because of what the nation has done for him. Because of when we go back 2 slides to see that list of things that he was before he joined the nation, and we see where he is now as the brother minister, he can't separate the fact that this is something anything other than a divine intervention on his life. All right, so um and this is a very fast forward moving um timeline of brother Malcolm's life. But in 1963, after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, Malcolm spoke about that situation at a rally after being instructed by Elijah Muhammad to not speak about it. And he made a comparison saying that the violence that America has committed all over the planet for its entire existence, especially in those recent times where American imperialism had really started to run rampant throughout the globe, that John F. Kennedy's death and assassination was basically the chickens coming home to roost, is the word or the words that he used. But what that means in layman's terms is he he was saying, I'm not really laughing at it, but he was kind of saying that's kind of what you get when you go out into the world and commit all these other crimes. That's something that it comes back on you. And he said things like that. As an old farm boy, chickens coming home to roost never made me sad. It always made me glad. Oh, why did he say that? The press took it, ran with it, and said that he was glad that John F. Kennedy was murdered. But anyway, yeah. So he leaves and he gets silenced for 90 days, and then during that 90-day period, he ultimately splits with the Nation Islam and goes to travel abroad throughout Africa, and goes on his holy pilgrimage that all Muslims are supposed to do in their lifetime. And his name becomes El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. Now, this is a very short time period in his life. As you can see, it's 1965. He gets assassinated, but he goes there and he says that he sees white Muslims, and he's drunk from the same cup as them and ate from the same plate. And he said that in the speeches that I read, or listened to that Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad said that white people could not even go to Mecca. Now there are some discrepancies there about how that all played out, but ultimately he starts his own organization, Muslim Mosque Inc., and the Organization of African Unity, adopting Sunni Islam, the Organization of African American Unity, which is modeled after the Organization of African Unity, where many African countries during this time period are gaining their independence from European powers as well. So his time as a family man, his wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz, and his 6 daughters. Oh, moving too fast. So he has a Tala, born in 1958, named after Attila the Hun. I'm gonna try to get all these right. Kubila, born in 1960, named after Kublai Khan. Ilyasa, 1962, named after Elijah Muhammad. Gumila. Oh, I forget. Gumila is named after. But Malika and Malak were born after he had passed away. Dr. Betty was pregnant with them on the day of his assassination. So unfortunately, they never got to meet their dad. And I believe one of them passed away not too long ago. But they are named after Malcolm. All right. So the given name to him by his African friends, Omawale. During his trip, he was treated as a guest of state in many countries, developed relationships with African leaders, working toward global unity for Black people. Black nationalism, Pan Africanism became things that he truly did discuss. Uh, his diary was released recently by his daughter, Ilyasa. So that's something that could really give you a lot of insight into his experiences in Africa. Here he is pictured with Maya Angelou, though, who he was friends with, and there was some correspondence about that experience in the diary. In the diary, also, there's a time when he gets really sick, where people think that he may have been poisoned. The FBI or he was under the surveillance of the FBI and the CIA as well during his time abroad. But he learned a lot during this time period, and he probably could have never returned to the United States and lived a long life in Africa and really been able to make a change. But his heart was here, his family was here, and he wanted to return home uh, to America and do everything he could to make conditions better for American citizens, African American citizens specifically. And the martyr. February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X is assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom. Um, yeah, it's one of the saddest moments because he's 39 years old, and it's so crazy that him and Martin Luther King died at the very same age. It's also crazy how well Spike Lee depicted this event in the movie X from 1992 with Denzel Washington. Based off the descriptions of and the images that you see of the actual event, the audio, there's audio out there of it. Spike did an amazing job recreating that moment. One of the saddest moments ever, and it really is a huge loss for for the world, because this man wanted to make the world a better place, and he was not afraid to speak his mind about. I mean, and there was some hyperbole in his rhetoric, but most of it was pretty straightforward and accurate. His influence, obviously my name is Malcolm, and many people have that name. But if you look throughout hip hop, of course I had to make a hip hop connection to it, where you could see many of the artists who he been inspired. I remember listening to the X Clan as a kid, and I had no clue what that really meant. That it was the Malcolm X Clan is who they were representing, with the red, the black, and the green, with the key. And of course, Tupac Shakur, Kendrick Lamar, Ludacris, Chuck D, Public Enemy, KRS One, and Spike Lee. I mean, Arrested Development, who even made a song on the soundtrack for the movie with Spike Lee. But being that he was in Harlem, and hip hop was born, not long at all after he was assassinated. Um, there's definitely a connection there where his influence will always be. Excuse me. And yeah, so I added a few other things to this slideshow. Like I said, this is from 2015. I'll probably do something else to really honor Brother Malcolm, but I feel like this is the most authentic and organic version of me celebrating him and kind of just telling a story about who he is based off what I've learned. But based what people think versus what versus who he was, you really got to read the speeches. You really got to listen to the lectures and decide for yourself if he was a violent man or a hateful man. And you can't. One thing you won't be able to find is in his adult life when he came on the scene on a public scale, on a national scale. There's no instance of him committing violence at all. And he's a girl dad, and he he was a man who was trying to raise 6 daughters, and there's really no dirt you can throw on his name you know after his young days. Which, hey, it's a story of redemption. It's a story of evolution of a changing mind and a growing mind. I think all of us can find where we look over all of our lives, we can find where we had to grow or we had to change. Or we can, if we constantly saying the same, is that a good thing? I don't know. But what I know and what I've learned from Brother Malcolm is to always strive to grow, to always strive to get better, and to strive to fight for others. Because this man could have walked away from all this and lived, but he faced that head on, man. And even when he was ready to break down, he didn't, and he definitely laid his life on the line and lost his life and gave his life for people like myself. I don't take that for granted because he didn't have to do that. And I added some other videos on these links. I'm going to click and share this on YouTube and put it in the description. And that's it. 23 minutes later, that's who Malcolm X was to me. That's who I was as a teacher in 2015 when it was celebrating his 90th birthday, and where I am today as a teacher of AP African American Studies, celebrating his 100th birthday, honoring him and my father giving me that name. And I feel like it's only right that I had to do something. I had to do something to just say a few words about Brother Malcolm. I'm going to keep making more of these videos, though. Peace. Holla at me.